Welcome back to Glam Unfiltered, hosted by me, Josh Smith. And today we're joined by model, UNICEF ambassador, activist. What do you not do?
Oh my goodness. Josh! Did I pay you to say that?
Oh, you pay me. It's the one and only Halima Aden. How are you today?
Amazing.
Now, you've just become the face of Bottle Top and Together Band all at once as well.
Yeah.
And you are breaking down boundary after boundary after boundary. Like, I was listing down your achievements. You're the first person to wear hijab in the Miss Minnesota USA pageant, the first model to wear a bikini on Sports Illustrated, which went global. Like, what have you learned from breaking down boundaries?
Whew. Oh my gosh. I learned so much in like the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But Josh, I like never thought I would ever like get to flip through a magazine and see somebody who I could like relate to wearing a hijab, or somebody who looked like me. So I can't even put into words how it feels to be that person for like so many girls in my community.
Did you feel represented ever growing up?
Well, there's nobody, you know, there's not a hijab wearing model, there was not an actress, there's not like somebody who I could relate to in that sense with the hijab and like, you know, but I did have Hannah Montana that I could relate to, who does not look anything like me, you know, she was played by Miley Cyrus, but it was also like the small town girl, like also having this career in like music, but also coming back and going to school. I don't know why, but I was like, oh, that's so cool, you know? But yeah, I found little like ways to relate to characters like Hannah Montana, but like never really somebody who I could relate to on like a personal level, or, you know, something deeper than that.
I guess you have to find your role models in your everyday life as well, I guess.
Yeah, and then some people, it's like, you don't have to look like me for you to be a role model for me. Like, I had women like Oprah Winfrey, who I looked up to when I was younger and in school and learning about everything, like her life journey, what she's had to overcome to become the woman that she is, and like just knowing that where you come from doesn't define who you can be tomorrow.
Now, you've had such like an inspirational story.
Thank
Like,
you.
for those people who don't know, you were like born in a refugee camp and then you came to the US when you were 7.
Yeah.
What was your like first memory of that refugee camp?
First of all, I remember running around almost butt naked at times, but let's be honest, like that was the best part about growing up in a refugee camp, is you got your hands dirty, you got your feet dirty, and it was like go out and play until like the sun goes down and then run back home. But it was definitely challenging in terms of like not knowing when your next meal is coming, and like malaria, and like just the element, and like the fact that your entire future, your entire livelihood is in limbo at all times. Like that was devastating. And I think as like children, like at 6, I couldn't tell you what a refugee meant or why I was that way, because all I remember was the camp. I was born and raised there. It was home. It was all I've ever known. So I had a great childhood because I didn't know any better. But it was definitely a happy childhood in terms of community. I mean, the refugee camp, it was like the largest, I think it still is the largest in Kenya. You know, Kakuma is one of the biggest camps in the world. So it was refugees from all over Africa, and a lot of them were my friends. And so getting to like learn Swahili and speaking fluent Somali and running around and singing, like my childhood was comprised of songs, and that was beautiful. That's something that I would never ever like change for the world. I wouldn't have had my life any other way.
How do you think those 7 years have shaped you as a person?
It made me rich in terms of, I know what brings me joy. True joy is having friends, like having friendships, even at 6, 7, like cultivating those relationships. It would have been so boring if my camp was made out of just other Somali boys and girls. Like I couldn't tell you how like bland that would have been probably, right? It's made me rich in terms of knowing what brings joy to my heart, you know?
Yeah.
And knowing that you'll survive. Like I was fine in the camp, like we were thriving in other ways, right? So that resiliency of knowing that no matter what curveball life throws at me, I know I'll be able to tackle it. I'll know I'll be able to survive it. I'll know I'll get through it because I've gotten through worse.
And I think it's so amazing you can sit here and say something that so many people see as a negative experience, to say it's like such an empowering experience.
Well,
right?
when you have nothing but that, you are forced to see the beauty in the littlest things, the simplest things. You are appreciative, you are grateful. There's no such thing as like a horrible childhood and in a camp. Like, I think there's always a good side. There's always a bright side to any situation.
Now you're going on to achieve all these incredible things, like being an ambassador for UNICEF, like being the face of these incredible brands. Do you feel like you're doing it for that girl who was in that refugee camp?
I see myself, and I always think like, what would 12-year-old me, what message could I have used? You know, that's why I always tell girls, don't change yourself, change the game. And when I say that, I really mean be confident in who you are. Like, wear your identity with pride, no matter what that looks like, no matter what that is. Wear it proudly, and the right people will accept you for you. And you don't need to fit the mold. You don't need to fit the mold. You are just fine the way that you are. Through my campaigns and through fashion and through this platform, I keep thinking like, oh, maybe I'm like telling my younger self a message that I wish I would have heard.
Throughout your whole life, how has your relationship with your hijab changed?
When I was younger, I definitely wasn't adventurous when it comes to my hijab. It was more of a, okay, I'm gonna just wrap my hair up, and like, I didn't know much about fashion, and honestly, I treated clothes like, I just need something to cover my back when I'm leaving the house. Fashion has taught me so much in terms of how to make my hijab customized to like my personality. Like, this is an edgier look, this is younger. I've gotten to experiment in so many ways the last 3 years compared to any other time in my life, and it's just been incredible. I just want girls to know, like, just because you wear the hijab doesn't mean like you're not a young girl yourself. Like, you still should be able to experiment and make it customized to your personality.
Which is such a great message to send out there, because so many people say so many negative things, and like, actually, you're actually there saying, this is actually a symbol of my own voice.
It's what I grew up seeing, you know, like my mom wore it, and then like I always looked up to her. And it's like lipstick. If your mom wears lipstick, you kind of want to emulate her beauty. You kind of want to, like, if your mom is walking around in heels, like so many little girls are like, and boys, I'm gonna walk
Let's
in
get real.
heels. I mean, let's get real. Like,
I did it.
there you go. And I think same for me with the scarf. I was like, I want to look like you. I want to look like her. I'm definitely experimenting when it comes to like ways to tie my scarf, ways to achieve turban looks. Because girls are on my Instagram telling me, oh, yes, sis, this is good. And, ooh, you really tried it there, Halima. And like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, I love the feedback that I get from other girls who wear the hijab, who maybe aren't in fashion and maybe will never like get to experience like working with a stylist, but then they can go to my Instagram page and they can like make that same look.
And they can find a community that represents them as well, which is such a powerful thing about social media.
Yeah.
What a great thing you're doing is that you're showing we're actually more similar to people than we are actually have differences from as well, which is such an important message to have. And that's what Together Band is all about, really. It's about spreading messages of togetherness. How important do you think that is for you, sat here in like the 2020 world we're now living in?
I mean, look at us. Like, we met today, an hour ago, literally, and sat down. And before the camera started rolling, like, we were able to just connect about London, and then I got to connect a little bit about Minnesota and like
Parent Trap.
And Parent Trap. There you go, boom. And it's like
Lindsay Lohan.
Yes, Lindsay Lohan. All these like things that just organically came up. Lay down the barriers and just connect with people, and you see them for exactly who they are. Like, it's togetherness, you know. And so that's why I'm like so excited to, even with my collaborations, like, it's not just fashion, it's more about what can we do to combine both fashion and activism.
What do you think being an activist means to you?
I had a hard time using that word to to describe myself, and even today, like, I don't really even say that, but for me, I have a hard time because I remember like the people who sacrificed their entire life to come and volunteer or to come teach in Kakuma. They've done so much in order to get that title. So sometimes I'm like, have I really earned that word? And sometimes today I feel like we throw it on so much, but I'm starting to be more appreciative and like, yeah, I can be proud of myself. Like, yeah, I'm doing something, you know, I'm like using my platform, and I always like compare what I'm doing, whatever it is, to like people who put in like the years and like the sacrifice and the, you know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, I'll give myself a couple more years and like ask me.
What do you think your career's taught you about the power of your own voice?
When you share your story, when you wear your heart on your sleeves, it connects with people, and it connects with people in different ways. Like, I've gotten just as many messages from Christian parents and girls who don't look like me but maybe live in rural Wisconsin or like small towns in America, who are like, wait, you didn't have to move to New York in order to have a career in fashion? Like, that's so cool. Like, I didn't know that a girl from a small town could go and do these things. And she relates to me from that lens, right? And then I also have the young Muslim girls who are like, wow, you're wearing a hijab, and I wasn't maybe confident in it before, but I see you rocking it on the cover of British Vogue, and I'm like, oh, I'll wear it proudly. And like, so many different messages from different people. And so I think that's what happens when you give your heart and soul, and like you're open. Like, I've been very open and honest about my journey, and like the good, the bad, the happy, everything.
Sitting here today, what do you feel like is the most pressing issue for you?
I look back at my years spent in the camp, and that's, that was when I was 7. I'm 22 now. And I'm just like, how is it possible that today we have more people in poverty than when I was in the camp? Like, to me, that is just devastating. And then you look at statistics like every 2 seconds, a person is displaced from their home due to war, due to famine, due to poverty. And I have a very hard time digesting that, because I look at the world that I'm surrounded by, and there's so much wealth, there's so much glamour surrounding life, and that I'm just like, what can we be doing? What can we be doing so people don't have to live that way?
And I think that's what's such an important symbol of Together Band, is that it's showing that we should all see the similarities we have in each other.
Yeah, and that's the goal, 2030, that's the big UN goal, 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So hopefully 2030, we'll have zero hunger, zero poverty, zero, those are ambitious. That's very ambitious, but I think that should be what every human is like striving to make happen. Let's make it happen, 2030.
And nothing's impossible.
And then,
honey, you are a symbol of that. Love that.
Oh, Josh, thank you.